Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cone back here again today with another video. When we look at the NBA offseason, it's kind of come and went. There are a couple major free agents that still need to be signed, one of which we'll talk about in this video. But for the most part, most of the big names are off the market. Maybe there are a couple more trades later in the offseason, but for now, the Summer League's on. We're kind of just waiting for the NBA season to eventually roll around. And so mostly what we can do is look at how teams changed over the course of this offseason. And I think when we look at this offseason and mainly free agency, there are two teams that a lot of people think were big winners and that people talk about a lot when we talk about this stuff. For example, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Miami Heat are two teams that people are talking about a ton. Both teams made the finals just a season ago, had disappointing 2021 campaigns between injuries and just not being good when they needed to be, and now they've retooled and look ready to try and return to the finals. Whether or not they make it, who knows? But I feel like there's a third team in kind of that upper echelon of teams that made massive improvements that is being heavily slept on, that people aren't talking about enough, and whose roster construction I think is amazing, and their new general manager that they got recently has done a phenomenal job in building this team. That is the Chicago Bulls. Before I talk about the Bulls, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe. Also, let me know what you thought of the Bulls offseason in the comment section below before and after I go through this video so you can kind of see what I have to say and see if it changes your mind at all. So when we look at the Chicago Bulls, let's go back first to the trade deadline of last season. They made a big move trading multiple first-round picks to the Magic alongside Wendell Carter Jr., who for a little bit was seen as potentially the center of the future, maybe in like an Al Horford role, is kind of the way I always saw him developing. Of course, it didn't end up working out, and now he has been pretty good on the Magic, but the Bulls made a win-now move to pick up Nikola Vucevic in the Magic's fire sale. It was a good move for them. I like Vucevic, and he's a guy that I think a lot of people sleep on, which I think is a big theme for this Bulls roster. When I look at the projected starting lineup of the Bulls, 1 through 5, I think pretty much every player in that starting 5 is underrated in some way or another by a lot of people. And that's part of why I think the Bulls are being slept on so heavily. This pickup of Nikola Vucevic was huge for the team. Vucevic is a guy that can go out and get you 20 and 10 any given night, but I'll talk about him a little bit more and how he fits in course with the team later in the video. First, going from the trade deadline to this offseason, they made a couple pretty big acquisitions. A smaller one that they made was adding Alex Caruso, who I think is going to be a great backup guard for them, probably going to play the 2 guard for the most part alongside Kobe White off the bench because they've got a new starting point guard in town in Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball was a massive pickup for this team. I think he is the perfect backcourt member alongside a guy like Zach LaVine. I think he's going to complement him well as the other talent on this roster. And then making a huge move, picking up a borderline all-star, which I think is something not a lot of people realize with DeMar DeRozan. They picked up DeMar in a sign and trade with the San Antonio Spurs. He was very close to being an all-star last season. He was one of probably the 3 highest fringe guys when you look at people that just barely missed out on the team, alongside maybe like a Shea and a De'Aaron Fox. DeMar was right there. If his team was better, DeMar might have been an all-star last season. So to add a guy like that for pretty cheap, they didn't have to lose a lot in their sign and trade. That's a big win for the Chicago Bulls. And so when we look at their starting lineup going into this upcoming season, we have Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic. That is a phenomenal starting 5. That has 3 all-star caliber players in that lineup alongside a guy in Patrick Williams who I think is really good and is up and coming, who now doesn't have to do too much, and a perfect backcourt member for LaVine in Lonzo Ball. So we're going to go through this 1 through 5, and I'll also talk about the bench. And we're just going to talk about why I think the Bulls are being slept on and how I think this roster fits together. Starting with Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball, as people have kind of famously nicknamed him now, got a pretty big deal. He got 4 years, $80 million, so around $20-ish million a year. And for a guy that has continued to improve each season, I think that's going to be a good contract. If I were the Bulls, I also would have signed him to that. He was long linked to the Bulls. There were rumors around the deadline that he would be traded from the Pelicans to the Bulls. It didn't end up happening, and so it ended up being the first move to go down after the moratorium period hit in free agency. Lonzo Ball to the Chicago Bulls for a couple pieces to the New Orleans Pelicans, including Tomas Satoransky, who started a lot of games at point guard for the Bulls this past season. Lonzo's great. He's a good defender, he's a good playmaker, and he's a much improved offensive player. That was his biggest leap last season. Lonzo looked so consistent on offense a lot of the time. He had some up and downs here and there, but by the end of the season, Lonzo was a consistent threat to score with the basketball. He's fixed his jumper, no more of this, a lot more of this, straight on shooting, and along that, his defense and his playmaking continue to come along as well. And I think the Bulls are going to let him be more of the playmaker that he wants to be than he was able to be on the Pelicans. With the Pelicans, there's just too many guys that need the ball. Zion and Brandon Ingram are both all-star level players who just work best with the ball in their hands. With the Bulls, you have a lot of guys who can play more off ball than I think the Pelicans were capable of, especially with the system they were running. I just don't think Stan Van Gundy was using him quite right. And I think he's going to fit really well in a Billy Donovan system, a coach who emphasizes defense and puts a huge emphasis on guards. Lonzo's going to be really good. He has the defense to kind of offset Zach LaVine, who is an improved defender, but still not great by any means. He's a good playmaker. And with a backcourt member in Zach LaVine who can not only catch and shoot, but he can also create his own offense as well be a great cutter to the basket because he's an insane athlete. If you didn't know that, you've never watched Zach LaVine play basketball. I think those two fit really, really well together. They are going to be perfect fits. And Lonzo, his time in New Orleans helped him develop as a catch and shoot guy and someone who can score off the pass, which allows Zach LaVine to as well bring the ball up the floor, be the electric scorer that he is. He's a guy that can average well over 25 points per game. And he's probably going to do that this season. He can be an all-star. And if he continues to get better, there's no reason why he can't be an all-NBA player at some point in the future. He's that good of an offensive talent. He can score from anywhere on the court. He's one of those guys that he can hit like 13 threes. He can heat up immediately. And when he's on fire, he's one of the most entertaining and hardest to stop players in the game because if you don't step up on him, then he's going to drill the three. And if you do step up on him, he's going to throw down a windmill dunk from the free throw line. So that backcourt pairing, I think, is severely being underrated. I've tweeted this out multiple times that I think this is a great fit, and I've still had people say why, or I don't see it. This is why. They both complement each other. Their talents fit alongside each other perfectly. Next, we go to the 3 position with Patrick Williams. He is dominating the Summer League. He doesn't need to be there, but it's still fun to watch him dominate the Summer League. He is going to be good, and now, with a ton of offensive talent around him, all he's got to do is play his role. And I think he's going to do that phenomenally. And I think it's going to be good for his development. Patrick Williams is a guy that needs to continue to work on his game and I think is going to continue getting better. And it will be useful for him for a season if he's able to learn alongside these great offensive talents and just kind of be that 3-and-D guy that I think could help the Bulls a lot in this upcoming season. One of the biggest complaints that people have about this Bulls offseason was that they suck at defense now, which is kind of weird to me because last year's Bulls team had worse defenders, and they were an average defensive team. I think they're around 11th in defensive rating. So they weren't bad. And they added Lonzo Ball, who's a good defender, Patrick Williams, who I think is going to continue to get better, and DeMar DeRozan, who's fine on that end. Adding a guy like Alex Caruso, who's going to be their backup too, who's a really good defender at the guard position, I don't see why they would get worse. Combine that with the fact that all these offensive players fit together really well, and this Bulls team is super good. When we talk about DeMar DeRozan, when we talk about playmaking with Lonzo Ball, DeMar can do that as well. DeMar averaged like 7 assists last season and around 20 points per game. That's a huge pickup for this Bulls team that a lot of time lacked facilitators. Their best facilitator last season was Tomas Satoransky because Kobe White is more of a scoring point guard at this point in his career. I'm high on Kobe White. I think he can still be a pretty good player, but for right now, I think he fits well in that bench role. And so, adding a playmaker in Lonzo Ball, as well as a wing playmaker in DeMar DeRozan, who played the 4 a lot of last season, he's going to thrive in that role. And DeMar, now that he's got all these weapons to pass to, he's going to average he's going to have like a similar season in terms of where he has tons of assists. Because on the Spurs, he didn't have a lot of weapons, but he was still able to get guys involved, get them the ball, and with great talents like Lonzo Ball, who can catch and shoot, Patrick Williams, who can catch and shoot as well as drive to the basket, and Zach LaVine, who can shoot from 50 feet out if he needs to, it's going to be heaven for DeMar DeRozan, and all of those guys can shoot the basketball, alongside Nikola Vucevic at the center position, which allows him to get more into his mid-range game and attack the basket more because they can just play 5 out with that starting lineup. And then when we get to Nikola Vucevic, he was an all-star a couple seasons ago. Vucevic is really good. Like I said, he can give you 20 and 10 on any given night. He can pop out and stretch the floor, which, like I said, allows for the slashing that a lot of the guys on this Bulls roster I think are highly capable of. So, this Bulls team is really good. And yet, I've seen a lot of people talk about how they don't think they're going to make the playoffs, how they think that they're a lottery team, that this team's better than them. I would be stunned if the Chicago Bulls roster didn't make the playoffs. And not only that, but I think they're going to give whatever team they face in the first round a really, really tough series. I don't want to face the Bulls if I'm going up against them in a first round series. I don't want to face them. because they have so much talent. They might not be one of those top 4 teams. I think if I had to name them, the top 4 teams in the East are the Sixers, the Nets, the Bucks, and the Miami Heat. I think those are the top 4 teams in the East. But the Bulls could be right there as like a 5 or a 6, and I don't want to face them in that first round. We talk about their bench. Ayo Dosunmu, I think he was a steal in the draft. Tony Bradley can be a good just run and dunk kind of center. He can fit the role well. Troy Brown Jr. is a solid piece that I like, and I like the way that they used him at the end of last season, kind of as more of like a ball handler type. You have Kobe White, who I mentioned, Alex Caruso, who's a good backup guard. Javonte Green has his moments here and there. I like this Bulls roster a lot. And in addition, Lauri Markkanen's not gone yet. So they either can bring back Lauri Markkanen to add another floor stretcher to this team if they want to, if he just accepts his qualifying offer, or he's going to get signing traded for more pieces. So either way, this Bulls team is going to just get better from here on out. The Bulls are being slept on. Don't sleep on them. Vegas has them winning 39 games or something like that. Don't sleep on the Bulls. They're going to be better than that. And like I said, I would be shocked if they didn't make the playoffs, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. When we talk about the winners of this offseason and teams that are going to make huge leaps this season, don't forget about the Chicago Bulls. They're really good, and I'm really excited to see the way they work out this season. Let me know what you think about their roster construction, their offseason. Do you agree with everything that I said? I hope you do, because I really am passionate about this team being good. I think they're going to be good. And this isn't just because I'm in a Bulls group chat. Shout out to In Our Tourists We Trust, the Bulls group chat on Twitter. Go follow me on Twitter if you don't, at 3_cone. I appreciate you watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I will see you guys later. Real One Save back.